Good evening. Tonight's invocation was going to be given by Miss Stacy Thurston, but she could not join us this evening. And it's a privilege, but also with sadness, that tonight's invocation is about two longtime Enfield Public Schools teachers that have left us since we've last met. One is Mr. Scott Bacon, born in Akron, Ohio. He grew up in Longmeadow. He enjoyed a very long teaching career here in Enfield Public Schools. He's a big fan of the Cleveland Browns. Former students still remember Mr. Bacon as his classroom was filled with humor and music, and he would insist upon playing his acoustic guitar while teaching multiplication tables. After it was passing, it was discovered that Scott kept anecdotal records of students that he had taught. So rest assured that if you were a student of Mr. Bacon's, you left as much of an impact on him as he hopefully did on you. Speaking of music, another teacher who we lost this past weekend was somebody that actually taught both of my children, Mr. Ralph Patterson. Mr. Patterson taught for over 40 years in Enfield Public Schools, starting in 1973 until he retired in 2017. His love of music was shared with Enfield and all of its children. He passed away this past weekend, as I'd mentioned, fighting a battle with cancer. He was also a musical director and piano accompanist for community theater and high school musical productions for several towns, including Enfield and many of our neighboring towns as well. His family has requested, in lieu of flowers, that you may make donations in his memory to the Enfield Public Schools Music Department. I'll put the address up on enfieldpto.com. And the family also asked that if you would include a short note indicating your memorial donation in Ralph's honor regarding his love and passion for music, that they would appreciate that. Rest in peace, Mr. Patterson and Mr. Bacon. Thank you again to both of these gentlemen. Now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Fire evacuation notice. We have two exits, one out the back of the chambers to the parking lot, or to my left, your right, out this, and then left down the stairs to the rear parking lot. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Thurston? Mr. Ungeyer? Here. Mrs. Hall?
Here.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mr. Ryder?
Here.
Mr. Salazar? Chairman Krusell?
Here.
Thank you.
Mr. Salazar had a previous commitment at home to handle tonight, so. Board guests, we have none. Number 7, Superintendent's Report, Mr. Drezek.
Sorry, do the mask switch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, before I begin, I just want to echo the sentiments that Mr. Ryder mentioned about losing two longtime Enfield Public School educators and friends, and our thoughts and prayers are with the Bacon family and the Patterson family. It's a tremendous loss for the district, and it's kind of been that year for us. So this is also a reminder that all Enfield Public Schools will be closed on December 24th through January 1st for the Christmas New Year's break. At the moment, students and staff should return on Monday, January 4th, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And before I conclude, I just want to draw everyone's attention back to the screen again. I got commented last meeting about how I was able to keep the mask dangling from my ear like our teachers have to sometimes. So I'm going to try my best to keep it there and not call any of our teachers out. This is going to look very similar to what I've shared with the board for the last previous meetings and with the public. There'll be a little bit of a twist to this, which we'll get out to right out of the gate. Sorry. You'll all recognize this chart, the infamous color-coded chart, and then there was an updated version of this chart that the state shared with us. This was the chart that was shared with the original guidelines that we received from the state that dictated what the decisions would be based upon when we transitioned from different learning environments, either being from all in person or to a hybrid or ultimately to fully remote. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or funny in any way, but basically, and you'll know this in a moment when I share with you the data, you can essentially throw this chart away. Because we've all blown past these numbers, not only as a state, but as a county and as a district. And to this point, all of the information we've been given from the state and from the State Department of Public Health was, and they've given reasons for that. I am not trying to be sarcastic, is that they've gotten more information and they haven't officially said we're not using the chart any longer, but they have been encouraging districts to stay in some sort of in-person learning if they can. And I'll go into that in a moment, but so that everyone at home knows, for the last several months, I've been starting these presentations with the charts. Up until this point, we have been following the guidelines because this is what the state outlined for us. I have shared some concerns throughout this last several months about the decision to make things unilaterally across regions or counties. And I went into great detail about, why they made the decision to make decisions countywide. Those decisions aren't going to happen. These are all local decisions at this point. And the decision right now to stay in school is essentially going to be based upon staffing. That's the directives that we've been given from all levels at the state. That said, I'll go through the numbers quickly. If you look at the indicators, and this is all based on the leading indicator, which is number of cases per 100,000 residents. And you guys can all recall those magic numbers I talked about previously would have been 0 to 10, more in person, above 10, transition back to a hybrid, and then 10 to 25 would be in the hybrid model. And then once you got to 25, start scaling back. Just to put in perspective where we are as a state, and these numbers, as a caveat, do not include the much anticipated Thanksgiving rush. As of last Thursday, the state of Connecticut was at 47.6 in number of new COVID cases per 100,000 population per day. That information was compiled for the previous 2 weeks, and it concluded on, I believe, the 28th of November. On a call with the State Department of Health last Thursday, they made it very clear to all of us that any numbers that we were going to get in this recent data dropping did not include the numbers from the Thanksgiving rush. And the reason for that was, and again, I don't know if I have the authority to speak upon it, but there was an overwhelming increase in the amount of people requesting tests leading up to and including the days after Thanksgiving. Because as you can imagine, people wanted to get themselves tested before they made a decision on whether they were going to travel or congregate with family members over the Thanksgiving break. And as of last Thursday, the state labs who have to process all these tests hadn't processed that time frame between, I believe it was the day before Thanksgiving and then the Friday after. So none of those numbers are included. If anyone paid attention this afternoon, we were told that those numbers from Thanksgiving will start to reflect in the daily positivity rate that the governor speaks upon. And I know it was over 8% today, close to 9, but I don't have the exact figure because it happened when I was in the middle of a meeting and trying to get over here. But as a state, that's where we are. Harford County, again, the original guidelines told us you should make decisions countywide based upon whether you're going to remain in a hybrid model, you're going to go full-time, or you're going to go fully remote. That we're not being asked to do that any longer. We're making adjustments as we go. But as you can see, if we were to go based on the indicator for Harford County, we're at 44.9 at the last data set, and we do know that number is going to increase. And just to put in perspective, when I first started presenting this information to you, I believe it was the September 24th data set, whereas a county we were at 4.8, but we were being told those numbers were starting to increase and expect to be at 10, and that was right around the time where we had to make a decision on what we were going to do for our next phase. And as you can see, we made all those metrics based upon the information that the state has given to us. So we reached that 10% plateau. So we've been following the guidelines all along, but unfortunately, my understanding, and there is rationale for that, and what's been explained to me thus far about not following the color-coded chart is that although these numbers are very high, and they're very high in communities, they are seeing lower numbers of infection rates in schools than they are. These are community numbers, and we'll get to Enfield in a moment. Although it is not accurate to say there isn't spread in schools. That I'm not comfortable saying that. Although most of the information that is being shared with us is you're seeing a greater community number than you are in schools. And one of the rationales, and I'm not stating an opinion on this either way, is that if schools aren't open, particularly for students who live in areas where there's a higher density of people, whether it's a multifamily home or an apartment complex where kids are going to congregate in a closer setting. Essentially, what's been shared with us is the powers that be believe that kids are safer in our buildings than they are if we were to go fully remote and they remain at home, because when they're with us, we watch them. They have to wear these. We have mitigation strategies in place while they're in our buildings where we can keep them approximately 6 feet away. Again, not taking a position on it. That was the explanation that has been shared thus far. And then jumping into where we are here in Enfield, we're still outperforming the state, but as you can see, our numbers are increasingly high as well. We are now currently at 34.4, but I can tell you that those numbers are going to go up. And I apologize, I meant to send this to you, Mr. Unghire, weeks ago, but now that I'm saying this, it's just reminded me you had a question about the numbers of who was included in the data set, particularly the prison population. They are not included in these numbers. These are just Enfield community. The prison numbers are calculated on a separate table. We do not have access to those. So these are just Enfield residents that make up these numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
No problem. Sorry, I'm like 2 weeks late on that one. Sorry.
Okay.
But you could see the other concerning trend on that third column is the number of cases over a 14-day period. When we first started these conversations, we were running about 10 cases over a 14-day period. And the last data set that went out, we're at 214. And that number is still increasing. So that's all I have for slides. I know there's probably some at home or in this room that are asking, those are the worst numbers you've given us to date. What the heck did you open the schools up on Monday for? So I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to explain what went into my decision and also what will go into future decisions that I'm forced to make. I also wanted to share with the public, and because we were coming off, as everyone knows at this point, we came off of a 2-week recess because of significant staffing concerns. And again, and I tried to clarify this to one of the local reporters who contacted me, that maybe it didn't come off as well in my letter as I had intended. When I referenced the high infection rate in our community, I wasn't necessarily referencing a large infection rate in the schools, but you have to understand that if there's a large infection rate in your community, our adults live in that community. And it's causing a greater strain on those who are required to quarantine, those who are required to care for others who are in quarantine, those who are close contacts. So it's just a snowball effect that the higher the infection rate in your community, you're going to see it in your schools. There's going to be an impact because we are the one thing that everyone has in common. Everyone sends their kids, and everybody, and a vast majority of our staff either live in this community or a surrounding community. So it's hitting us all, including our neighbors. When it came to reaching the decision my apologies. The other thing I did want to mention, just because we haven't been in school until yesterday, doesn't mean we were exempt from having any new cases since we've been in what I'm referring to as a recess. Just to put in perspective, since December 1st, as a district, we've had 17 new cases with students and 7 with staff members. So although you haven't gotten the robocall or the letter, I made that decision, and I'm on camera, and I'm probably going to get in trouble with the state because I didn't send the letter out while we were in recess. There was 2 reasons for that. One being that there were no school contacts because we were on a break. So we did have to do some contact tracing. It wasn't as extensive as it normally would be because no one was physically present in the buildings during the window when we would have to track people down. And the other reason, to be quite honest, is I know that when people get that, whether it's a robocall or an email from us and it says important COVID update, it creates a greater sense of anxiety for parents and for kids when they see that. And because we weren't in school and we didn't necessarily have to reach out to as many people as we typically would, I didn't want to raise the alarm for people in the community thinking, wait a minute, I'm not even in school and I have to worry about getting that phone call. Because what happens is when the letter goes out, people then sit by the phone and wait, is my child one of those who might have been a close contact? And we're trying to avoid that. I will say, we were supposed to get one today, but it came in right about as I was getting wrapped up to try to get over here, and I missed the cutoff for the robocall. So you will get an updated letter tomorrow about in cases that we were notified of today. We will start that process up again. But I wanted to make sure that people didn't have the impression that, well, since we were on recess, everything just went away. It's actually it's maintained its level of concern. Which again goes back to the question of, well, what did you open for? So one of the reasons that we, and I tried to express this in my communications to not only to the members of the board, but to all of our staff, as well as to the members of the community. This was probably the hardest decision I've had to make. I'll let him off the hook on this one. That since this whole process began. Because on one hand, we knew that these numbers were evident, they were coming. And we also knew that a lot of people are starting to get seriously concerned and even borderline scared. We also know that there's a lot of people who are voluntarily keeping their kids out of school at this point now because of the information I just shared and anytime you turn on a television. But what really was the deciding factor for me, and again, I've come to live with every decision I make, somebody's not going to be happy with it, and not saying I enjoy it, but I've come to terms with it. When you look at the calendar, the day that we were forced to shut down, and just let me reiterate for those at home who may not understand, the breaking point for me to actually shut the district down is that we had 100 staff members that were absent for COVID-related reasons, either being in quarantine or being infected themselves. We could not function as a district safely any longer. The folks at JFK, and there's some in the room right now, those people need to be commended for even trying to stay open as long as they did. We had cafeteria workers serving lunch and then going and covering classrooms, so we had adult supervision in classrooms. We had every administrator covering classrooms. We had teachers jumping from team to team trying to cover classrooms, foregoing their breaks, foregoing their lunch, just to make sure that it came down to, can we just supervise the kids that are in the building? Dr. Berrios, to his credit, wanted to try it one more time, just because he wanted to see if we can, do the best we could for our kids. And we finally had to make the decision a few days before we shut the district down that we had to shut JFK down. So it wasn't for a lack of trying. But when you look at the calendar, it was, given the information I had at the time, which was last week, all signs are pointing that this particular peak or wave or whatever you want to call it that we're going through is not going to hit its apex until the beginning of January. And that's not from me, that's from all the public health experts throughout the country. My concern was that if we didn't have an attempt to get our kids back in, and I kept having, reflections of the spring, when we would have conversations of, if we can just have the kids back in for a day, what would it do for the mental health of the kids? What would it do for our kids' confidence? What would it do for the kids who really just need to see their teachers and see their friends for a day? And there was nothing we wouldn't have done just to let them back in for the last day of school before we shut down. Well, we didn't have that opportunity. But I do remember those conversations, and I do, I've had conversations with a lot of people who are, whose kids are struggling right now, particularly our youngest kids, particularly our kids with special needs. And I had a fear that if we didn't attempt to try to get back, and I'll be honest, Sunday night, it was a roll of the dice. I wasn't sure if we were going to make it then either. And I credit our staff for coming together to make sure that we can open just so we can see our kids again. However long it lasts, I have no idea. But my concern was looking at the calendar. If we didn't attempt to get back on Monday, in all likelihood, we wouldn't have made it back in the month of December. And given the information that's publicly readily available at this point, and also information that's shared with us in other formats, the beginning of January doesn't look very good, that these numbers are going to increase, particularly as we're starting to see the fallout from Thanksgiving. If anyone doesn't think we're going to continue to see enough, if people weren't going to follow all the rules at Thanksgiving, and I'm not blaming anyone, I mean, the rules are out there. And just as a side note, in the state of Connecticut, you were permitted to have a gathering of 10 people or less in your home. People did that. They played by the rules. But if 5 people were not that you were at a gathering with, and they could all be blood relatives, but if they didn't live in your immediate home, some of those 7 cases are people who played by the rules. They went to Thanksgiving with just 3 other family members and had a dinner of 6. and then got called 3 days later and said, one of the 6 that I was at my dinner party that doesn't live in my house just called me and is positive. That was Thanksgiving. People are more apt to travel for the extended break, especially school-age families, because that's one of our vacations, either out of state or gathering and congregating for Christmas or for the holiday season. So we expect these numbers to go up for Thanksgiving. We're just starting to see them. There is a real concern about the numbers we're going to see during the Christmas break. And because of all those reasons, the beginning of January is still in question right now. And the decision that I had to make was looking at the calendar. If we're not able to return on January 4th, like I said in the update, and I said I would talk about it in a minute, I'm not 100% certain we will be able to. Looking at the calendar for those kids who really need it, that would have been a 2.5-month break. And it would have replicated something similar that we went through in the spring. So as much as I don't want anyone to get the impression that I don't care about the adults in the building or anyone else that actually run our schools, couldn't be further from the truth. This decision was about trying to give these kids as much sense of normalcy as we can for as long as we can. And I can't promise how long that will be. The cases are coming in hourly. The staff members that are required to quarantine is piling up by the hour. We are going to be in the similar position that we were 2 weeks ago in the relatively near future. But if we can at least get our kids that need it, even a couple of days to get acclimated and have that sense of that connection, there's no better connection. There's nothing a kid can learn on a screen that will replicate what a student gets when they're with their teacher. So we owed it to them to give it one more shot. And that's what I did. My hope is that all this magically goes away and we don't have to deal with this anytime soon, but we all know that's not based in reality. So that was really the basis of my decision, was the extension of the break. If we didn't attempt to get students back in this week, would have gone beyond 2 months. And I understand the damage that will cause, and we owe it to them to do everything we can. And I appreciate our staff members for the amount of outpouring that I've gotten from staff members that said, yeah, I'm nervous to go back in, but I understand. I get it. We have to do this for our kids. Let's give it one more try. And that's where we are with it. So I can't thank everybody enough. Those of you who work here and work for us and work for your kids, I know the sacrifices that you're making. I know people are riddled with anxiety right now, but in the end of the day, you have to make a decision and look in the mirror and say, is this what's in the best interest of our kids? And this is what I believe was. That said, I can't proclaim how long it's going to last. My hope is we can give our kids the best we can, as I said in the message, as long as we can do it. But the information that's coming through isn't promising. One of the things that we did do over the Thanksgiving break, which softened the blow a little bit, was by going fully remote the days leading up to Thanksgiving. That allowed, there were certain family members that we've heard from that were going to quarantine anyway because they wanted to see family members they haven't seen in 7 months. The other concern about the days leading up to a holiday break is it gives us a little bit more leeway in not having to track people down over a holiday. So at this point, I am very seriously considering, and I may even go as far as to say I'm going to do it tonight, is that for the week of December 21st is to go fully remote. That would give us 2 weeks back. And it's essentially only 2 days because that Wednesday is a half day and it's a remote day anyway. But for that Monday the 21st and Tuesday the 22nd to go fully remote. And there's another reason for that as well. If we're in school on Monday and Tuesday and there is transmission, we have to contact trace. And we have put our administrators, particularly, I know our teachers as well, but our administrators have been through hell with this. Having to track people down on holidays, on Sunday nights, on Saturday mornings. I don't want to put people in a position on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, if they celebrate it, that they've got to track down 15 students that were in a particular room. And the other reason for that is allowing certain people the opportunity that if they are going to try to interact with family members, they essentially have from the Friday before to get their house in order if they're going to interact with other family members, and whether it be quarantine themselves or get tested. So there are some, I've had conversations with some of our colleagues in the area. A lot of people are considering it. I expressed my reasons why I was considering it. I'm strongly considering it. I only say what I said because the last time I mentioned something, the chairman looked at me and said, well, just make the announcement now. You got everyone's attention. So if we want to do that when it gets to your comments, let me know and I'll do it. But I wanted people to understand why I was doing that. And then obviously I don't want to make any declarations now other than, at least I don't want anyone surprised that the beginning of January doesn't look very promising. But I'm going to end on a positive note. And that is, there is help finally coming. And by now, unless you live in a cave, you're well aware that there's a lot of talk about the famous vaccine. I can't give you any specific information on it because I know probably as much as you guys know. However, we have had more meetings in the last 2 weeks about preparation for the vaccine than we'd had in the previous 7 months. What I'm sharing has been shared publicly by the governor, and it's in one of his press conferences on the slide. You can look it up yourself. But right now, we're expecting that tomorrow, that the first Pfizer vaccine will be approved for emergency use authorization. But we're told to expect that the first doses of vaccines for those in Group 1A, which are healthcare workers, and those in nursing homes, including staff members, could expect the vaccine to be distributed as early as this coming Monday. That's a good sign, because once they start administering the vaccine, we know that's only going to increase as time goes on, and we'll have more data. And I know people are sketchy about vaccinations. I'm not even getting into that argument. I'm getting into the argument is, I think everyone realizes the only way we keep our schools open at this point in time, uninterrupted, is if our staff is, or a vast majority of our staff is vaccinated. I don't know. I've had the question, can I force people to get vaccinated? Right now, I don't know that the answer. I would never want to do that if someone's uncomfortable. But based on conversations I've had, a vast majority of our employees, I think by the time it's available to us, have indicated that they would be comfortable taking it. So just to put in perspective, if 70% of our staff members voluntarily took a vaccine, that's 70% of our staff members. And we're now only dealing with trying to cover for the 30% who may still be required to quarantine or step out. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen with the vaccine, but I do know it's coming. The one thing that was confirmed for me today was school staff are in what's called Group 1B. And now Group 1B is pretty large. So the first group is just the two demographics I shared, healthcare workers and those in nursing homes. Group 1B includes everyone else that they account for as essential workers, which would be police, fire, EMS. Teachers and school staff are included in that group. There is whispers that teachers will get moved to the front of the list because everyone understands the importance of our teachers being safe so that we can ultimately get our kids back in on a more regular schedule. That has not been confirmed at this point. Those are just whispers in my circles. But once it is confirmed, you guys will be one of the first to know. And then obviously our staff would be the first to know to say, if it were available, people would be able to participate if they choose. What also selfishly for us about being in Group B as opposed to Group A is we'll probably have a month where people have already taken it, and if there are any side effects, we'll know. I guess I shouldn't laugh about that, but these days you got to laugh about something. But all indications are that Group B will start that administration of the vaccine mid-January, which again puts us in another conundrum. If we're able to come back to school in person somewhere around the same time where we know that our staff can probably get vaccinated, it's going to be a tough decision that I have to make. Is it worth it to just roll the dice and bring people in and potentially expose people, or are we so close to the end? I don't want to say the end because not everyone's going to get it, and I'm not going to force people to get it. But are we so close to at least having some comfort level that a vast majority of our staff members will have it? I don't have enough data right now to say one way or the other, but I at least wanted to make people know what our thought process is. We're watching it very, very closely on when this is going to be distributed, when our turn in line is. I don't know how it's going to be distributed at this point. We do know that the Pfizer vaccine is about a week ahead of the Moderna vaccine. So we expect that those, a week from this coming Monday, that first group of people who are eligible will be receiving their vaccinations if they choose on the 14th, I believe, and then the 21st, it's expected about a week later that the Moderna one will be. So having two effective vaccines starting to administer its way around is the best news we've had in a while. But it will have an impact on decisions that we have to make going forward. It depends if these timelines stay true to what they're telling us right now. So that said, I think I covered everything, and I tried to do it as quickly as possible, but that will conclude the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Drezek. Number 8, audiences. Anyone want to speak in the audience? I declare audiences closed. Number 9, board member comments, and we'll start at this end, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Drezek. I had one question about the schools, and that was if a family had opted for full remote and they could opt back into hybrid. The most recent date began yesterday. I can't imagine there's very many, but if somebody wanted to at this point, could they just email the administrators in their building, or have we set a new date for like the next phase?
No, it's going to be rolling at this point because there's not a huge variation in the figures. I don't have all of. I could share at some point. I do have one school's numbers, but I know some of the elementary schools are still working on compiling it for us because it just happened yesterday. But if any parent who's watching, if you're requesting a change in status either way, I just encourage you to reach out to your child's administrator, and they'll work with you. If somebody may change their mind today and said, you know what, I really want to send my child in for Thursday, we may ask for another week to get prepared for it. But to be honest, Mr. Ryder, we're not seeing a lot of people coming in. We're seeing more people go out.
Understood. Thank you. I just had one question about that, and I just said I'd follow up, so everybody got the same answer. So today was our first of 2 PJ days. So once again, we're doing the Enfield Public Schools / Enfield PTO PJ Day. This is to raise money for CCMC, or Connecticut Children's, as it's known now. And this is to raise money for children specifically battling cancers and of the nature of like blood disorders. And I wanted to thank everybody. So the last couple of years, we've done this as a district, where everybody sent home flyers, and I went to all the schools in my PJs, and I spoke to the teachers and the kids, and every year we raised a little bit more and a little bit more money, and it was fantastic. But this year we couldn't do that because I couldn't visit the schools, and we couldn't send flyers home. And until yesterday, we weren't open for the last 2 weeks. So all the donations are online only this year. It's give.connecticutchildrens.org/go-to/Enfield Public Schools. If that's too long for you, it's probably too long for me. But so just go to EnfieldPTO.com on Facebook, Twitter, or the .com, and you can find the link. So what I did is this year, I figured I'd half last year's totals. So last year we had raised just over $5,000, about $5,100. So I figured I'll make this year's goal half of that. And if we even raise $1,000 in this climate, I would be so happy. I'd be over the moon. Well, we're already at 95% of the goal, which was 50% of last year, or $2,500. As of the start of this meeting, we were at $2,376. So once again, as I emailed to all the donors earlier this afternoon, I am blown away by the generosity, by the excitement, by the passion of our town, our teachers, the kids, the PTO volunteers, the moms, PTO moms sharing this on the Facebook pages. And I mean, this was all just online this year. There was not one paper flyer could go home for obvious reasons. So thank you, everybody. So today was PJ Day for Cohort A. because Tuesday is their Friday, as well as for our remote students. So if you were learning from home today and you didn't feel like changing, you could just say, Mom, I'm doing it for the kids at CCMC. I can't get changed. And we're doing this again on Friday for Cohort B. So for all the students that are like myself, last names L through Z, you'll see the two Rider kids in their PJs at Eli Whitney and JFK. And I'm hoping that between now and Friday, people keep making contributions. They are optional. Basically, when we were open, the kids would bring in $1 or 4 quarters or 10 dimes and sometimes 100 pennies. And that was their dollar, and that meant to their teacher that they could wear their PJs for the day. So this is something we've done as a district now for 3 or 4 years. It's something that I did as a PTO dad at Hazardville Memorial and Eli Whitney for before that. I have 2 great teachers at JFK that have been running this at JFK for years, another teacher at Parkman that's been doing it for years, and I just said, let's just all do it as a district, put our support together, and try to make an impact. And this can be one of the many, many nice things that we do as a school district throughout the year. So thank you. Joyce and Tina, your PJs look amazing. You remembered that it was PJ Day. So today's PJ Day 1, Friday's PJ Day 2, and I'm so happy that the kids, that we were open today and that a lot of kids got to wear their PJs to school. I saw a lot of pictures on Facebook. Thank you, everybody. Okay, honor roll. We posted the honor roll. And thank you to the Patch for posting these things and sharing these things, not just within our school district, but to the Enfield community as a whole. So it's great to see that post, like, when you see your name in the newspaper as a kid, or your sports scores, or the reading medal that you got. It's so great. So the honor roll has been posted for first quarter marking period at both JFK and at the high school. There's links to both names on EnfieldPTO.com. There's also a link there about free meals for Enfield students throughout this school year. So as long as we go in June 2021, you can get free meals, breakfast and lunch, all the details, how to do it, etc. EnfieldPTO.com. It's in our blog. Look for the free meals link, and we also post that quite a bit on the Facebook and Twitter so people see it. Wreaths Across America. So we're doing the ceremony locally here in Enfield at St. Patrick's Cemetery on Saturday, December 19th. We are not meeting again as a board this calendar year, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that now. Now the wreaths, you can sponsor a wreath through Hazardville Memorial School PTO, Henry Barnard PTO, JFK PTO, Eli Whitney PTO, Enfield Street School PTO, Parkman PTO, Prudence Crandall PTO, First Readers, and several other Enfield groups. So if you go to wreathsacrossamerica.org/pages/15610/groups, or just go to EnfieldPTO.com, you'll see the link there. You can sponsor a wreath. They've basically just wiped out the deadline. They're going to take donations, take wreath orders all the way up until Friday night, the 18th. And again, the ceremony is on Saturday, the 19th. So they'll take orders up until Friday, the 18th. And the ceremony is at noon everywhere across the country. So even when it's noon here and 9 a.m. on the West Coast, it happens at the same time. I also wanted to mention some of the great things that our staff are doing. Thank you, Mr. Delaney, and to everybody at JFK. At Eli Whitney, when we had to close for 2 weeks, the teachers all got together and they were sending an email around to the staff, and they said, what would be great is if through Teams, since we all have the iPads, the kids all have the iPads at home, if we did like a reading night. Every night we'll read a book to kids at 7:30 p.m. And all you do is just go through your Teams channel and you find the link. They had so many teachers to raise their hand to say, oh, I'm going to read this book that I loved as a kid, and I'm going to read this one, I'm going to read this one. They do it every night now. They were going to just do it on weeknights, and basically they had enough people raise their hand that they're going to be doing that, have been doing it for a while now, and they're going to continue to do it probably till the end of the school year. So thank you to the staff at Whitney for that. I don't know if anybody has PTO updates from some of the meetings that they've been to, but I was at 4 PTO meetings last week myself. I was promoting PJ Day coming up, so I visited with everybody at JFK, Prudence Crandall, Henry Barnard, and at Eli Whitney. This week I'm meeting with Parkman and Hazardville. Parkman's meeting is Wednesday at 6. Hazardville is Wednesday at 7:30, both tomorrow evening. But a lot of the PTOs got together and, we were kind of all emailing each other. So we thought if we are open next week, which it looks like we are, that we would do like a PTO Spirit Week to kind of do something fun for the kids that are going to school on the days they go. So we've posted that as well. There's a schedule up. A lot of the schools have said, yeah, count us in. So we're going to do a Crazy Socks Day on Monday, wear your favorite colors of the season on Tuesday, your reds, your greens, your sparkles, whatever you want to do. Wednesdays, we're all home, so we can do another PJ Day at home. And then if you do go to school on Thursdays and Fridays, they're going to have a holiday headwear day for red hats with balls on them, or antlers, reindeer antlers, etc. And then Friday, we're going to round out the week with an ugly sweater day. And I just say ugly in quotes because the ugly sweaters now are so cool and fun that that's the new thing. But thank you to everybody that donated and made a donation to PJ Day. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you to everybody that did that, because it means a lot, and it's something that we can do and be proud of as a community. I know we do things like this all the time. I'm in charge of some of them, and we're all in charge of one thing or another. But this is a really big deal, and I was very proud to see that, and can't wait to see how well we do the rest of the week. Thank you very much. Mrs. Thurston asked me to pass along her best wishes for a safe and happy holiday season for everybody, and I echo her. So thank you again, Stacy. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Ms. Hall.
Thank you. PJ Day is fabulous because I get to wear my favorite. Yes, my favorite color in great masses. My favorite color is not a color, it's a plaid. And this is my perfect happy plaid. Let's see, last week there were meetings for Head Start policy and KITE. At KITE, it was announced that they have received a 3-year, $50,000 per year grant from the Fund for Greater Hartford. And it will go into effect at the beginning of this coming year, not having to wait forever because it's the middle of the year kind of thing. It's intended to be used in planning and developing around social and emotional learning. The Head Start policy meeting last week, same day actually, was as entertaining as usual. But I have a message for some of the parents who have not been coming to the meeting, but I really would love to see you there. And if, for example, you are not showing up because you're afraid the kids will interrupt, because this is a virtual meeting, don't worry. We're all there for kids, and we'd love to see them and actually talk to them or wave to them, whatever is appropriate at that given time. So please come. I occasionally, at odd times, because I'm looking for some information, go to the Enfield Schools website, which I did this week, and found a virtual video of the Enfield High School fight song, and is something that all of you should be looking at and enjoying. It is not just student instrument players, but some of the staff's there as well. In those little tiny squares, it's hard to tell who was who, but they're all there and they're making music. Be sure to see it. And while you're at it, while you're thinking of holiday things and food, don't forget the ERFC cupcake sale. You have until Friday to put your order in, and then you pick them up on the 15th. And as Scott has mentioned, breakfast and lunch are available to all children in the town of Enfield. Remote and in-school meals, breakfast and lunch are free to every student until June 16th of 2021. The rules are definitely available. There's no application required, but they do like to be notified before the pickup days, which are on Monday and Wednesday at Enfield High, that you will be picking up a breakfast and lunch. Again, complete details, enfieldschools.org/district/department/nutrition services. And this is the flyer that you will see if you look for it. The season is one where contributions seem to be being requested everywhere. Even PJs require them. But among other potential donors in the area, one of my favorites is Donors Choose, which enables us, whoever you're interested in supporting in the education department, teachers nationwide actually, you can contribute as little or as much as you choose. And then there's the local Loaves and Fishes, the Enfield Food Bank, or the Enfield Warming Center, all good places to share. And I'd like to share happy holidays to all of us and to everyone out there watching or listening, whether you watch it tonight or next week on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Ms. LeBlanc.
Yes. So I wore my PJs tonight as well. It's a little hot in here, but I'm doing okay. But it's very nice to be out in my pajamas. I just have a couple questions for Mr. Drezek. Well, first of all, thank you for clarifying about the opt-in date. That seems to be a factor when parents want to go remote. Like if I go remote, when can I opt back in? They always just want that peace of mind that they have a date that they can do that. So I appreciate that. I guess this is more of a comment. I definitely see the state taking a different role this time around than they did in March. I don't want to say throwing caution to the wind, but I feel like we went from one extreme to the next. And you clarified tonight that, they want the kids in school as much as we can. I think they got a lot of, heat for keeping us out after the first of the year. And a lot of it truly doesn't make sense to some people because we always had these spreadsheets and information that the state has given us. And now, again, we're kind of, going beyond that. You don't have a crystal ball, you talk to them, but do you foresee the state making an executive decision again, or is it going to really be a by district type of decision?
I don't anticipate the state making a unilateral decision again when it comes to schools.
Interesting.
Everything thus far has been, it will remain, and they say local decisions, but they mean superintendents make them.
Right. I think what's interesting to point out too is a lot of our neighboring towns are very small as compared to 5,000 students. Some of our towns have 2,000 students. So when people compare us, they need to look at other districts that have the amount of students that we have in town. One of the things I noticed that Enfield does is we are kind of like an all or nothing district, like we're all in or we're all out. Do you foresee that there could be circumstances where we would, maybe have to do full remote at the high school or JFK and then, send the younger kids in? Or is that something we would consider as a district?
It's something we have considered.
Yes.
There is a couple of schools of thought on that about, the older kids can function better in a remote environment maybe than some of our younger ones. But then it becomes there are some tentacles to that. There's an equity piece with that, requiring some kids to come in person as opposed to other kids. You have families who have kids in different levels that could create issues for them from a parent standpoint. I wouldn't rule anything out at this point. We've tried to thus far avoid that and be equitable across the district because we have so many people that interact at different levels, not just students, but we also have staff who have kids in schools at different levels. We have, and I mentioned when we shut down that we were on the brink of not being able to transport kids because we had, Smith Bus has done a remarkable job keeping open through all this, but they're not immune to staffing issues either. So, the effect that it would have on transportation if you only had one level in and not another level in. So there's a lot that goes into it. We've tried to avoid and be consistent for the whole district to this point. But again, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring or the next day is going to bring. I mean, if we can provide the best opportunity for kids as we can, it might look different than it looks now.
Yeah.
But I think everything at this point, what I share with the administrators is we're going to do everything we can. Everything's on the table, including the reality of just having to come to the realization that we may not make it, and it's no one's fault. I mean, no one asked for this, but we're gonna we owed it in everybody. We owed it to these kids as much as we could to try at least one more time.
I feel like what you've tried to establish is consistency in a time when everything's inconsistent. So, having that all or nothing approach, oftentimes I'll say, you get questions like, well, this one's the high school's remote, but, these kids are in. And I think if you're a parent with multiple kids in the district, knowing where everybody is on that given day can relieve some stress. So
one of the things that we should be very proud of, that when the world gets back to normal, we can get back to celebrating again. And I think Ms. Hall referenced it in her comments, was the amount of partnerships that we have in this community. And although we may be different organizations, we really are truly partners with organizations like KITE and organizations like ERFC. And if you can recall, we were able to open this year because of the quick thinking and quick action of Ms. Hall and getting the Distance Learning Center opened so that we had enough staff members who had childcare issues. When I make a decision like this, that has an impact on her programming, her funding, because people have to send their kids one place, and then there's another transportation component of that we're driving. As you know, like with Claire's program, they're not in the schools now. Everybody's over at the annex at this point, so it's not just as easy as, well, just let the kindergartners come in, everybody else stay home. I wish it was. That would make my life a lot easier, but we're
just to
trying to do
end,
the best we can.
just to end, I just wanted to say this. I saw a video a teacher had posted, not around here. It was a high school teacher, and she had heard from a student that went full distance learning at the end of the year, who was a senior, and now she had been distance learning at college, and she said, I feel like I'm losing so much because I wasn't in school at the end of my senior year, and then I'm starting college. Like this person reached out to her favorite high school teacher to say, keep me going. And the teacher, and I'm going to speak to it later, said, our curriculum and our academics is all geared towards a group in-person setting. It's a huge adjustment. And I think in due time, every student's going to have that point in time where it's just not working. And I see that as a district, that's what we're trying to avoid. So that's just my comment on that. The other thing I wanted to mention is my condolences to Mr. Bacon's family, Mr. Patterson's family. I did not know Mr. Patterson, but reading what I've seen on social media, he definitely had an impact on students and families in this district. What I can tell you about Mr. Bacon is he was a teacher at my elementary school, and we had 3 teachers you always wanted to get. It was Mr. Bacon, Mr. Reveruzzi, or Mr. Underwood. And there was a merry-go-round at Prudence Crandall, which they would never allow now. And all the kids would pile on. This was like mid-'80s, and either Mr. Rev or Mr. Bacon or Mr. Underwood would like spin that thing, and kids would fly off, and they were always singing and at each other, and they were in competition about their sports teams. So I have fond memories. I never had Mr. Bacon, but I have fond memories of him making that wing in Prudence Crandall a really fun wing when you were in 5th and 6th grade. So he was always the teacher that you'd want to get, and he stayed that way through his teaching career. So I just wanted to reflect on that memory I had of him. I'd also like to speak on Cookies for Camouflage. I participated and I baked. This was the 11th annual Cookies for Camouflage. 136 boxes were filled and shipped to service members. This year we had 22 recipients. The recipients are deployed service members from Enfield and surrounding towns. The postage was fully donated, and the amount of postage was $26.65. $2,665. That's how generous our community is to our veterans, or to our acting service members. It looked a little bit different this year, but as far as, dropping off your cookies, but Lori Gates did a great job, and she works well with the post office on Enfield Street. They help her out quite a bit. The other thing I wanted to mention, which I was hoping to mention the last meeting, but I didn't get a chance to, is we have some congratulations in order to our Enfield High recipients of the North Central Act of Kindness Award: Sydney Hamry, Ryan Miller, Caton Landry, and Anthony Okraska. Aaron Clark tweeted that and said, "You make us proud." Lastly, I saw today on Facebook that the Enfield Safe Harbor is accepting donations right now. You get these little cute crocheted pigs, and they can be used for gifts, and it's to raise money. And now is a perfect time to be donating to the Food Shelf, Loaves and Fishes, and the Enfield Safe Harbor. They're a wonderful group. The website for the Enfield Safe Harbor is www.enfieldSafeHarbor.org, or you can reach out to Monica Wright. She does wonderful things for that group. I believe they're offering training right now for people that want to volunteer their time at the Safe Harbor. Okay. Bear with me. I've been thinking a lot, everyone. So I typed something up. I have to put on my glasses. I might take off my mask if they get fogged up. So this will be my last board member comments of 2020, and I have been reflecting on what I wanted to say tonight. This was a year like no other for all of us. COVID has taught us more than we ever thought. We learned about life and death. Some days we live in fear, and others we feel strong and ready to conquer. For some of us, it's made us better family members, better friends, and better neighbors. For parents of younger kids, you had to smile and explain to our kids the new normal, the changes, why they couldn't see grandparents play sports, go to karate or dance, why they couldn't have play dates or a birthday party. For the parents whose kids were starting kindergarten this past fall, never did you imagine the first day of kindergarten would be like it was. For the parents of young special ed kids, this time has been exceptionally challenging. Kids that thrive on routine and needing to know what each day will bring were thrown into a world of uncertainty that you didn't have answers for. All the while, juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. Maybe you are an essential worker who continued the best normal day you could. For parents of older kids, it became a battle of making sure their work was getting done, explaining why they couldn't hang out with friends, mustering a smile and encouragement as junior and senior events were canceled, like proms, making the best of an unconventional graduation, being that you couldn't wait to see your senior walk down the EHS hill for the graduation ceremony, wiping tears and disappointment away from missed chorus and band concerts, senior games, etc. For the parents of special ed kids, this time has been exceptionally challenging. Kids that thrive on routine and needing to know what each day will bring were thrown into a world of uncertainty that you didn't have answers for. All the while juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. Maybe you are an essential worker who continued the best normal day you could. For teachers, you have felt like you have been failing at your career, failing the students and families. I can assure you that many of you have been a steady constant that our students have needed during this unsure time. When you were all in college, there was no course or semester that taught you how to teach during a global pandemic. There was no professional development you could take on a global pandemic. For the special ed teachers, your concern and need to want to help your students during this time was felt from many conversations with you. I am not a teacher, so as I said in the past, I cannot understand what you are going through. I watched a video the other day that said curriculum is based on a group teaching model, and that is what all your schooling has been. But what I want you to know and see is that the students and families appreciate you more than you know. We see those late night Power School updates. We see the late night emails. All the while, juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. You truly have to understand that you do make a difference every day in students' lives, no matter how hard this has been for everyone. You are appreciated more than can ever be expressed. For the administrators, you have had to be strong and help lead the district during this time, getting buildings ready for our new normal, answering our countless questions. I say our, meaning parents. Parents who are reaching out and to try to prepare our kids for what the school year will look like in such an uncertain time, trying to make things certain, working on staffing issues due to quarantine and contact tracing, all the while juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. For the cafeteria workers, thank you for providing our breakfast and lunch program during this pandemic. Your dedication and commitment is exactly what parents appreciate during this time. All the while, juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. For all our paras who work with our high-risk students, thank you for staying in tune and coming back during this crazy time to help bring the routine back to the students' lives as best as you can with all the uncertainty. All the while, juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. For our bus drivers who drive our kids, thank you for starting school with excitement to see the kids and get back to driving our most precious cargo. Thank you for adhering to all the new rules and regulations. All the while, juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. For our secretaries, thank you for fielding countless calls and emails for our numerous questions. Thank you for providing information and a smile when needed. All the while, juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. For our guidance counselors and school psychologists, thank you for being you. I can imagine that you have seen the ramifications this pandemic is causing on our students. Thank you to the guidance counselors as well for helping getting the students' schedules and classes in order. That was no easy task. All the while, you've been juggling, helping with distance learning, job furloughs, working from home, and perhaps sick relatives. For our central office staff, thank you for working to get all of our students devices and Wi-Fi. That was a monumental task to do in a short period of time. Thank you for handing out paper packets back in the spring to make sure students had them. Chris and Andy, thank you for being the voice of reason as well as making educated, informed decisions regarding our school district. Thank you for giving us parents a choice regarding the best learning for our individual families. And thank you for keeping our district students and staff health and safety at the forefront. For our students, thank you for being or trying to be resilient during this time. As a board member, I have thought of our youngest learners having a different type of first day of school to begin your EPS journey. I've thought about our third graders who are entering new schools, our middle schoolers who are entering our school for the first time or returning to a building under construction, to our incoming freshmen and seniors who may have missed out on pep rallies, drama productions, marching band. I think of you. One thing that resonates from every school is how well our students are doing with all the changes in every grade from our youngest to oldest learners. During all this, we have seen civil unrest and systemic racism. We have seen that civil unrest and systemic racism are at an all-time high. Some of us have learned that if we are quiet and fear difficult conversations, that we cannot be part of the solution. One of the best things that can be said about Enfield, Connecticut is that we are a diverse town. Diversity should be celebrated and not hidden or feel shameful. At our last board meeting, a parent came and spoke on behalf of the trans policy that was not included in our first reading. I have thought about what he said for weeks, and he said I could speak to it tonight. Mr. Hamry said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, I cannot change your mind on how you feel about trans kids, but I can let trans kids know that they are supported and heard. What I struggle with personally as a board member at times is not being able to change people's minds, especially when I think the situation is unfair or unjust. What I learned that night from Mr. Hamry is this: I can't change people, but I can change me and let people know I hear them and support them. And not just by saying it, but showing them. I will continue to show you as much as I can as an Enfield Board of Education member to advocate for our policies and changes that will benefit EPS as a whole, and especially our high-risk youth. Our country is divided as well as this board. It was never so evident than in our last meeting regarding policies. Many times this term, I have honestly wanted to throw in the towel due to the total lack of disregard and disrespect from some of our opinions, and our requests have been met with. I'm not a quitter. I will not quit because I am not being heard or valued by my board constituents. I will stay because I value more the relationships I have with families and people I have met during my tenure, and especially during this pandemic. I will stay because I look at all the adversity teachers and students have faced this year and haven't quit. And I love being able to be part of this amazing school district. As we approach 2021 and get ready for our next local election, please watch. Please watch and see how elected officials treat each other on their boards or councils, both good and bad. I can speak from experience that how they treat their constituents is often how they think of or how they treat community members. With all that being said, I hope for the community members, from teachers to parents to caretakers to anyone that reached out to me during the last 9 months, that I have been able to provide information, lend an ear, or have been able to help communicate to make this difficult time a little less difficult. And I also, it's the end of the year, and it's been a very big reflective year for me. I will also take the time to thank my family, Steve, Regina, Cam, and Colin. You guys are my rocks and have been amazing through this pandemic. Lastly, I want to wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season and a happy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBlanc. Mr. LeBlanc.
Well, very well said. There's no topping that. You nailed it on the head with everything you said. So, as with any decision, regardless of the direction, criticism is going to be offered. But from my perspective, there's a heavy part of the population that wants to be in school. Thankfully, for the remainder of this year, we can also provide fully remote for those who choose to do so. So the overall theme of my comments tonight relates to what some of our superintendent touched on earlier. Being offered the opportunity once again to be in school at least twice a week during these extraordinary times can mean a world of a difference to so many family and students. For those, that difference is simply allowing kids to be kids and having the freedom to make choices. These families understand there is a potential risk, as there is always with everyday life, and still feel the best opportunity for their children's mental and physical health is in school. I'll try to take it easy tonight with a few of the questions, Mr. Drezik, but I did have a few. One, speaking of mental health, are we ensuring and reaching out and directly contacting any child who guidance or social services may know is going through a difficult mental challenge right now?
I want to say yes, but I don't want to misinterpret. Are we directly, any child that we're aware of that's having an issue, and if it's being referred through guidance or from youth services, we are working very closely with youth services throughout this whole process too. So any child that we know of or suspect is having a tough go of it now, we are doing everything in our power to make sure we reach those kids and those families. So I think that's a yes, but I didn't want to misinterpret the way the question was asked.
Thank you. Secondly, as my aunt touched on, special needs, some of the most vulnerable in this time. How are they doing overall, and are all IEPs being met?
Yeah, we're I mean, all the IEPs are being met, which is, we're legally bound to. How every child is doing is going to differ about how every child's reacting to the circumstances. For those of our highest need special ed students, the opportunity to still be in school 4 days a week is still there, which is, again, it's not ideal for some students, even though it's more so than what other kids are getting. But when I say ideal, it's 5 days a week. But it is a lot better than we experienced in the spring, in the spring shutdown. And I know that our special ed team, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our administrators who are sometimes in those classes with their kids are doing everything that they can, not just to meet the needs and the goals and objectives that are on our IEP, to making sure that the needs of those kids and those families are met. And I'm very confident in that.
Great. Attendance, how's that going? And hypothetical scenario, if a student logs on, what's to prevent them from walking away and not being held accountable? A scenario such as?
We would know. So if they log in, and then you can tell how long they're on for. So it could be followed up with either through the teacher or through the administration if need be.
Okay, good to know. And lastly, my last question for you is, with our faculty and staff who are keeping all this afloat right now, have we looked into possible scenarios if that staff shortage happens again, especially if the state doesn't change some of the guidelines? One of the ideas that I saw between our last meeting and this meeting, being thrown out on a state level was college students. Or avenues such as that being looked at, or?
Yeah, the state actually came out with their calling it the Step Up Initiative, where they're encouraging kids who are home from college that may be interested in acting as substitute teachers. I know that working with Kelly Services, who does our substitutes anyway, they're trying to recruit as many kids now that some of the regulations have been relaxed a little bit. We haven't thus far seen a huge increase in the amount of participants in it. But I know that we're reaching out every avenue we can to get as many hands on deck as possible, because I don't want to be too pessimistic, but it's kind of unavoidable that we will be in another staffing crunch relatively shortly. So we're doing everything we can to find anyone who's willing. We're finding a lot of with college kids is that some of them are still in quarantine because they're coming home from out of state. So we can't really bring them into a school when they're locked in their rooms at home. So hopefully, if they don't go back, that may open up another pool for us to get at least some more adult supervision in the buildings if possible. We'll take anybody we can get right now.
Yeah, crazy scenario. So the reason I asked our superintendent about our obligation to reach out to children who may be suffering from mental challenges is due to a recent Washington Post article that kind of hit me in the spot. It was about a father who lost his 13-year-old to suicide. The article stated how mental and physical health are completely intertwined, to which I completely agree. He stated about his son, who never had prior depression or mental health problems, quote unquote, "COVID killed my son, but not in the way you think. The combination of not seeing others, not being able to do the sports he loved, and the stress of everything going on was a perfect storm to lead to this one impulsive act, an act he couldn't take back." Another story came from a mother who said her daughter came to her in a trance saying, quote unquote, "Mom, maybe I need to talk to someone. Maybe, Mom, I can't do this. I can't do this." So people may continue to say, how can I be talking about sports or theater in the middle of a pandemic? And I have no problem taking that criticism, because these are the exact reasons why I do so. Because it's more than a Christmas show. It's more than a football game. It's more than being in a classroom. School and extracurricular are just as much of a part to keeping kids healthy. And there is a mental health crisis out there because of these lockdowns, and quite frankly, media hysteria from all sides. If this can happen to these two families, who are just an example of many others from around the country, real true stories, then it's just as capable to happen right here in Enfield too. And I want to make sure we are doing everything in our power so it doesn't happen. The real toll may not be visible right this second, but in years to come, we will certainly see it, especially on a mental health basis. So I will be reaching out to our 3 state officials as I want to find out exactly how much funding is going towards mental health and substance abuse services to help alleviate this situation. Also, to anyone in our community who may be listening, please, if you feel you may need help, know there is help out there by getting in touch with 1-800-273-TALK or contact your school staff who have been highly trained in these areas. Also tonight, I want to recognize one individual accomplishment that is so rare that with the help of former Fermi coach Ben Alex, I found out it has only happened 8 times in Enfield history, back when we had both Fermi and Enfield High, and now and the new Enfield High. That is our first ever Enfield Eagle wrestler to 100 wins, Justin Beeler, whose father happens to be in the crowd tonight in the audience. Even more rare than 100 wins is that Justin and his teammate, Alex Martinez, are the first ever Enfield wrestlers to achieve the distinction of academic All-Americans, which requires the athlete maintain at least a 3.6 GPA and is only given to 90 wrestlers across the country. Justin is now wrestling at the University of Southern Maine, majoring in sports management. Coach Jay Flynn and the entire Enfield wrestling team really have a tremendous program going on to both You, Justin, and Alex, a huge congratulations, and I look forward to meeting you and celebrating your achievements at your high school in the near future. Lastly, over at Stowe Early Learning Center, families are making wreaths as a way to participate, as board member Scott Ryder mentioned earlier, in Wreaths Across America. Tremendous job to all the Eaglets. And a personal message, as I know they watch all of our meetings, to a very nice couple I met over Thanksgiving break who have children over at St. Bernard's. This message is to you. Thank you very much for your act of kindness. And to all of Enfield and all of us here tonight, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. Mr. Ungary.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to start off by saying that I am not wearing my pajamas. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing my pajamas. And I say that because I don't want anyone to think that I sleep with a jacket and tie. So, Mr. Superintendent, I want to thank you for your thorough and comprehensive report. Appreciate the level of visibility that you provide in your report, and it helps us to recognize and to better understand the challenges that you as administrators are faced with daily. And it's very encouraged to hear that that a vaccine is on the horizon, and that is very encouraging. It will hopefully take us back to some sense of normalcy, hopefully, and hopefully 2021 will be a much better year, and 2020 will be something that we will always remember and like to forget, unfortunately. So with that, that's really all I have to say, other than I appreciated in your report too, you had placed in some new charts and I like those new charts. They were good. Thank you. And
I have to thank Mr. Barassa. He did most of the legwork on that.
Okay. And then, so with that, I just wanted to wish everyone, all my fellow board members here and our administrators and those of you in the audience and those of you watching, just a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah if you celebrate that holiday, and any other holiday that you celebrate. Wish you all the best for you and your families, and all the best in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ungary. So, as always, you guys hit everything, but you did forget one. First Readers had a meeting, and we didn't want to forget the First Readers because the last ceremony they had was literally the week that we closed down in March, that Monday. So they missed the June ceremony and the November ceremony, but they are planning a ceremony in May. Date is still to be determined, and it's going to be some sort of drive-through ceremony, but details are all still being worked out. So just stay tuned, and we'll bring you updates as we get them. But it's looking like May, and we'll get caught up with all the First Readers out there that have accomplished and will accomplish before then. So I did also sit in on the kite meeting last Wednesday. That whole team is phenomenal, what they do. And now with the way they meet in Zoom too, they're just a great bunch of people, and I thank them to the bottom of my heart for what they do for this town. So for those of you who have asked me, I fixed my wife's gavel. I do have a permanent dent from 4 weeks ago, but it is what it is. But I did fix it. So thank you for all those that asked about that. I'm sorry I had to use it, but it is what it is. But thank you for all your support out there, because I did get a lot of calls on that I did use it appropriately. So we'll leave it at that. And the question that you asked about the governor closing us down, I can answer that one, because I don't think he's going to pull that trigger again, because he got burnt on it when he pulled it last year. So I think he's going to leave that for our local decision, which that's what it should have been back last March, and in June, but that is what it is. And with that, I want to thank everyone for this year. Thank all the work they've done, from the superintendent and assistant superintendent, the staff at central office, to all the principals, assistant principals, deans, everyone that's worked to keep our kids in school. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hopefully this, like he said, that we could put this year in the past and we can go on to 2021. The vaccines are coming, but they're not going to work if we don't take them. So please, just consider taking the vaccine so we can nip this virus in the butt and let it go away like it should. So thank you again. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. God bless you all. And we'll start with unfinished business. Unfinished business. We have none.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add, I
Yes, Mr.
apologize. I
Dresser.
actually forgot one thing, and Mr.
Yes,
Blank
Mr.
hit it,
Dresser.
so I'm comfortable, but I have to apologize to Lori Gates. I have it on my list. Lori, if you're watching, with Cookies for Camouflage, I actually had the picture she sent me, and I forgot because I was dealing with this junk. So, Lori, I'm sorry, but Lori Gates is awesome. Sorry.
Yes, I agree. And and Reach Across America, that's coming up on the 19th. It is a great ceremony, and do go out to their website. I went and purchased, and everything is on their website. You got to do some navigating, but you can find which cemetery to have them go to. King Street, St. Patrick's Cemetery, King Street. Make sure you sign it to that, and also whatever PTO or First Meters or whatever you want to. Every $5 for every wreath goes to the organizations. So do that. That is very important. So. And I know everybody here in Enfield will, so. Anything else before we go on?
One thing.
Yes, Miss Hall,
I
sorry.
forgot to include Toys for Tots,
Oh, yes,
which is what the police department is
yes,
collecting.
very important too, and they're having a hard time collecting too, so yes. And mentioning police, we lost a retired policeman over the weekend. Our prayers are out to his family. And he's a very, very well-known and very long-serving policeman. His wake is tonight and his service is tomorrow. So just God bless for that, and God bless their family. So now we move on. Number 10, no unfinished business. We have none. Number 11, new business. We have none. So we move on to board committee comments. Curriculum, Mr. LeBlanc.
Curriculum will be meeting next Thursday, December 15th, 17th, one of those two. Next Thursday, not this Thursday, next Thursday.
17th, yes. Finance, we had a meeting back in November 16th, and I have an update coming later in the agenda, and then we have a meeting next Monday on the 14th at 4:30. Policy, Mr. Elmgeier, anything?
Policy meeting, will be meeting on Tuesday, the 15th, this coming Tuesday,
At 5:30.
5:30 is our policy meeting.
Leadership, we have none. Joint facilities will be meeting this Thursday to discuss more, to try to get at least a phase of each of Eli Whitney's and Hazardville Memorial's roofs going. And I think that's about it from there. JFK Building Committee met last Thursday, and if you go out on YouTube, the meetings are on YouTube now. Please go see it, because there was a great update on the Blue Wing and on the auditorium. I think they're laying steel this week for the auditorium. So the work is progressing. What a great contractor, and all the crew out there for what they do through this pandemic and how they've been working on it. So do check out the meeting out on YouTube, and there was a slideshow on there too. Joint security was canceled this month, so I think the next one's in March, I believe. But we'll find out. Joint insurance was also canceled. It won't be until March. And that's about it. Any other meetings anyone else want to discuss? Okay, so we move to number 13, approval of minutes, regular Board of Ed meeting minutes for November 10th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Hall, seconded by Ms. LeBlanc. Any discussion, changes? All in favor? We have 8, 7, what do we got? 6 in favor, right, John? John, you in favor? 6 in favor, 0 against. So we move on to number 14, approval of accounts and payroll, and I have them here. So, the Finance Committee met on November 16th, 2020 to review financial statements for the month of October year-to-date and to examine various documents related to finance. Our review concluded that there's nothing significant to report to the board. I need a motion to accept the superintendent's certification as follows. I hereby certify that in the month of October, total expenditures amount to $5,985,880.17, broken down between payroll totaling $4,024,529.94, and the other accounts totaling $1,961,350.23. All payments have been made in accordance with the approved budget and are properly accounted in the books of accounts. Copies of approval for checks and invoices are properly documented. Moved by Ms. Hall, seconded by Ms. LeBlanc. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. 6 in favor, 0 against. And one more. The Finance Committee met on November 16, 2020 to review financial statements for grants during the month of October year-to-date and examine various documents related to finance. Our review concluded there was nothing significant to report to the board. I need a motion to accept the superintendent's certification as follows. I hereby certify that in the month of October, total grants and Head Start expenditures totaled the amount of $518,291.12, broken down between payroll totaling $326,303.33, and other accounts totaling $191,987.79. All payments have been made in accordance with the approved budget and are properly accounted for within the books of accounts. Copies of approvals and checks and invoices are properly documented. Moved by Ms. Hall, seconded by Mr. Ungary. Any discussion? All in favor? Have 6 in favor, 0 against. That is it for that. There is no line item transfers. And we're at 15, communications and correspondence.
Nope, nothing.
The only thing I have is I got a text that we have 124 viewers on YouTube. So thank you out there to the YouTube world for watching our meeting. Do we have a need for executive session? No, we do not. So again, I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and let 21 come. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Ms. LeBlanc, seconded by Mr. LeBlanc. Any discussion? All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you. God bless.